Stop. Stop. Before you go any further, understand what this is. What you're about to hear was never meant to be read aloud. There is a library with no address. Its volumes were never published, never printed, never meant to leave the shelf. I read them to you, one at a time. Tonight, Volume 1, 13 Laws of Power. Not the kind they put on posters, the kind that gets used on you every day by people who count on the fact that you were never taught them. Here is my promise. The first 3 laws alone will let you see every manipulation attempt aimed at you for the rest of your life, and the 13th law, the one they guard most carefully, makes the other 12 almost unnecessary. The door is open, come in. Why would knowledge like this be locked away? Think about it coldly. Every system you live inside, every marketplace, every workplace, every feed you scroll, runs smoother when you don't see the machinery. A customer who can't feel urgency being manufactured buys faster. An employee who can't name a guilt trip works longer. A man who doesn't know the laws of power is not a player in the game. He is the board. Nobody signed a decree banning this knowledge. They didn't have to. It was simply never put on the syllabus. You learned algebra. You did not learn why you say yes when you mean no. So this library exists to correct the record. Everything you'll hear tonight is real. Real experiments with names and numbers, real history, real protocols you can run tomorrow morning. We deal in true things here. The only forbidden part is that no one intended you to gather them all in one place. A few instructions. Listen at night if you can. Headphones, let the room go dark. And if you drift off before the end, good. Sleep. The library keeps your page. Come back tomorrow. The candle will still be burning. One thing before we begin. If someone sent you here, or the algorithm slipped this past the gate, claim your key and subscribe. The library remembers who enters. Now the first law is the one they guard most carefully, because it costs nothing to use, and there is no defense against it. Law 1, the sealed mouth. In 1912, a man walked into a negotiation that should have destroyed him, and won it without making a single argument. Here is the strange mathematics of speech that nobody teaches you. In 2012, 2 Harvard neuroscientists, Diana Tamir and Jason Mitchell, put people into a brain scanner and offered them money to answer questions. Small money for questions about facts, slightly more for questions about other people. And then, this is the beautiful part, they offered less money if the subject chose to talk about themselves. People took the pay cut. Again and again, they gave up money for the privilege of self-disclosure, because the scanner showed why. Talking about yourself lights up the same reward circuitry as food, as money itself. Read that again slowly. Your mouth is wired to pay for the pleasure of opening itself. Now understand what that means in a room where power is moving. Every negotiator, every interrogator, every skilled salesman on earth knows this circuitry, not from the paper, but from 10,000 hours of watching it work. They know that if they simply go quiet, you will fill the silence. And everything you pour into that silence, your budget, your deadline, your fear, your real price, becomes their property, for free. The old world knew this before the scanners did. Talleyrand, the French diplomat who somehow served the revolution, then Napoleon, then the kings who replaced Napoleon and died in his own bed, wealthy, which tells you everything, is remembered for one line above all. Speech was given to man to conceal his thought. His rivals mocked him as a silent snake. His rivals are footnotes. John D. Rockefeller ran the most attacked corporation of the 19th century and gave his enemies almost nothing to hold. His rule, written in his own letters, success comes from keeping the ears open and the mouth closed. When hostile lawyers finally dragged him in front of investigators, reporters described the strangest thing. A man perfectly relaxed, answering slowly, volunteering nothing, wearing them down with calm. They came to carve him. They left with shavings. So here is the law as the library records it. Power flows toward the sealed mouth. Every unnecessary word you speak is inventory handed to the other side. Notice, this is not a law about lying. It is a law about volume. The amateur explains himself. The amateur defends himself. The amateur announces his plans while they are still soft enough to be killed. And the room quietly reprices him with every sentence. Silence does something else. something darker and more useful. It makes other people reveal their position. Sit across from someone, ask one honest question, and then nothing. Watch. 3 seconds of quiet feels like a held breath. 5 feels like pressure. At 10, most people will start negotiating with themselves, softening their own demands, apologizing, offering information you never asked for. You did nothing. The circuitry did it for you. From the field notes pinned to this page, 3 sightings of the law in daylight and the interview room. What are you currently earning? A polite question, and a trap with velvet jaws. The number you volunteer becomes the ceiling of the offer they were prepared to raise. The sealed answer. I'd rather focus on the value of this role. What range did you budget? Costs you nothing, and routinely costs them thousands. The recruiter knows this law. That is precisely why the question comes first. The announcement. Psychologist Peter Gollwitzer ran studies on people who declared their goals aloud and found something bitter. The announcement itself delivers a small identity reward, the warm glow of being seen as the man who will do the thing. And that glow measurably drains the tank that was supposed to fuel the doing. The ancients said it shorter. Talking about the hunt feeds you like the hunt, which is why talkers stay hungry. Seal the plan. Let them meet the result. The feed. Every photo of your new purchase, every public mood, every location tag, a dossier self-assembled free of charge, readable by rivals, employers, burglars and manipulators alike. Each entry, answering questions no one had the right to ask. The old intelligence services paid fortunes for what the average man now publishes before breakfast. Tonight's protocol, 3 moves, run them tomorrow. First, the 3-second seal. When you're asked anything that matters, let 3 full seconds pass before you answer. You will feel the pull to fill the gap. That feeling is the wiring. Notice it and let it pass. What survives those 3 seconds is usually the only thing worth saying. Second, never answer the question that wasn't asked. Half of what people surrender comes attached to answers nobody requested. Can you deliver by Friday? Is answered with yes. Not with yes, though honestly we're stretched thin and I'd have to beg my supplier. You just handed over your army's position on a napkin. Third, end on the question mark. In any conversation that matters, make your last sentence a question. The one who asks directs. The one who explains submits. Try it once and you'll feel the shift in the room. Small, silent, unmistakable. If you're still listening and you're the kind who was always going to be, open the ledger below and write 3 words. I found the archive. That's how the library counts its keepers. But now a problem. A sealed mouth is bolted to something underneath, and if that thing boils, no seal holds. Before you can rule a conversation, you must rule the animal having it. And that is the second law, the law 2, the calm center. In the year 175, the most powerful man alive was handed a piece of news designed to break him. And his response was so strange that historians still argue about it. Avidius Cassius, his most trusted general in the East, had declared himself emperor. Rebellion. Treason from a friend. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, and in secret, the author of a private journal never meant for publication, received the report in camp. No rage, no purge. The sources describe him as grieved, not for himself, but for Cassius. He told his soldiers he hoped to be given the chance to forgive. And then he did the most powerful thing available to him. He proceeded exactly as planned, unhurried, as though the rebellion were weather. Within 3 months, Cassius's own officers killed him. The rebellion evaporated against a man it couldn't provoke. When Cassius's severed head was delivered as a trophy, Marcus refused to look at it and had it buried. In that private journal, he had written the sentence that explains the whole performance. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Now, 18 centuries later, put that sentence in a laboratory. When you are insulted, threatened, cut off in traffic, the signal reaches your amygdala, the alarm system, about a quarter of a second before your reasoning cortex even gets a copy of the memo. The chemistry of anger, the flush you feel in your chest, takes roughly 90 seconds to release and wash out of the bloodstream. 90 seconds. That's the whole storm. chemically speaking. Everything after 90 seconds is you, choosing to re-trigger it, replaying the insult, feeding the loop. The neuroscientist Jill Boulter Taylor, who mapped this from the inside after her own stroke, called it the 90-second rule. The wave rises and dies on its own if you don't keep striking the water. There's more. A UCLA lab under Matthew Lieberman put people in scanners and showed them disturbing images. One group just watched. The other group did something almost childishly simple. They named what they felt. 2 words, that's anger. That's fear. On the scans, the act of labeling visibly dampened the amygdala, as if naming the animal put a hand on its collar. They call it affect labeling. The library calls it what it is, a leash made of words. So the second law, the man who cannot be provoked cannot be played. Understand why this sits so early in the volume. Every manipulation you will hear about tonight, every trick of urgency, guilt, flattery, authority, needs one ingredient to work: your arousal. A triggered man is a puppet reaching for his own strings, begging someone to pull them. Provocation is not rudeness, it is access. When someone pokes you and watches your face, they are checking for a handle. Show them a calm center, and the handle isn't there. This is why the interrogator insults the suspect, why the rival jokes about your failure in front of the room, why the negotiator keeps you waiting 40 minutes. None of it is the attack. All of it is the probe, looking for the button that turns your cortex off. Field notes, The Law in Daylight, Berlin 2006, the World Cup final, extra time. Marco Materazzi tugs Zinedine Zidane's shirt and speaks 2 sentences, chosen by his own later admission to sting. Zidane, the greatest player of his generation, in the final match of his entire career, turns and drives his skull into the man's chest. Red card. France loses the trophy it had been favoured to lift. Materazzi's provocation cost him nothing and bought a World Cup. The button worked because it existed. The reply all. Somewhere tonight a career is ending in a company email thread. A sharp message answered sharper. At 11 p.m, copied to everyone. HR archives are cemeteries of 90-second waves that were typed instead of survived. The rule among old operators: write it hot, send it never. The morning version wins cases, the midnight version loses. The staged outrage. In negotiation trainings they literally rehearse it. The scoff, the folder slammed shut, the walk to the door. Manufactured anger, deployed because a flustered counterpart concedes faster. When theatrics erupt across the table, the trained response is boredom. I see this matters to you. Shall we continue with the numbers? Rage that gets no audience runs out of script. Tonight's protocol. First, the 90-second wait. When the flush hits, look at a clock if you can. Give the chemistry its minute and a half before you say or type one word. You are not suppressing the feeling. You are letting the tide finish. Decisions made inside the wave belong to the wave, not to you. Second, name it to leash it. Silently, 2 words: anger, rising. Shame, hot. It feels absurd. The scanner says otherwise. The moment the feeling has a name, you are looking at it instead of out of it. Third, the Marcus move. Whatever the provocation, ask one question. What does this change about my plan? Usually nothing. Then proceed exactly as planned, visibly unhurried. Nothing unsettles an opponent like discovering that his best shot changed nothing. A calm center and a sealed mouth. Already you are harder to read and impossible to bait, and we are 2 laws in. But now we turn outward, because the most effective chains ever put on a human being don't feel like chains at all. They feel like a gift. Law 3, the invisible chains. In 1971, a psychologist at Stanford named Dennis Regan ran an experiment disguised as an art appreciation session and quietly documented the cheapest way to buy a human being. 2 men rate paintings in a room. One of them is a plant, an actor working for the experimenter. In half the sessions, the actor slips out on a break and comes back with 2 bottles of Coca-Cola. I asked if I could get one for you too. A 10-cent kindness, unrequested. In the other sessions, no Coke, just the break. At the end, the actor asks a favor. He's selling raffle tickets. Would the subject buy some? The men who had accepted the coke bought twice as many tickets. The dime-sized gift more than paid for itself. And here is the detail that should keep you up tonight. It didn't matter whether they liked the actor. In the no-coke sessions, likable actors sold more. In the coke sessions, likability stopped mattering. The debt worked on its own. The chain didn't care about the feelings of the person wearing it. Reciprocity, the oldest circuit in social man. For 100,000 years, the tribe survived because a favor given was a favor stored. Refusing the cycle meant exile, and exile meant death. So the wiring goes deep. Unreturned debt causes physical discomfort. You know the feeling and that small itch when someone's done something for you and the ledger is open. Predators bill that itch like a utility company. The Hare Krishna movement built a fundraising empire in the 1970s on a single move. Press a flower into a stranger's hand at the airport. Refuse the flower. They insist. It's a gift. Now the ledger is open. And the donation request arrives 3 seconds later. Millions from dimes of carnations. The free sample at the market, the vendor's lavish dinner before the contract, the drink he sent to your table, the colleague who covers for you once and cashes it in for a year. One architecture, endlessly reskinned. The gift that arrives just before the ask was never a gift. It was scaffolding. So the third law, whoever gives first and gives unasked, owns a piece of you until you name the debt. And that's the defense, the entire defense, naming. The chain is invisible only while it's unspoken. The moment you can look at the coke, the flower, the dinner, and think, in plain words, this is a bid for obligation and the compulsion loses its teeth, you can still accept. Accept warmly, but now it sits in the correct account, a tactic received, not a debt owed. Field notes, the chain in daylight, the doctor's lunch. For decades, pharmaceutical reps delivered pizza and branded pens to clinics. Trinkets, surely too small to sway a medical mind. Then researchers matched prescribing records against gift registries. Even a single sponsored meal under $20 correlated with measurably higher prescribing of the promoted drug. The physicians sincerely felt uninfluenced. The ledger doesn't ask how you feel. The timeshare weekend, a free resort stay, they insist, no obligation. By Sunday, you have received 2 nights, 4 meals, a harbor cruise, and a 5-hour presentation where saying no now means stiffing hosts who have been so generous. The industry's entire acquisition model is Regan's dime, scaled to a hotel. The office favor. A manager approves your small request with conspicuous warmth, leaves early Friday, no problem at all. Within the month, the invoice weekend work, framed not as an order but as balance. After everything I've accommodated, the best defense was installed earlier. Accept favors at work only at the size you're prepared to repay in daylight on the record. Tonight's protocol. First, separate the gift from the ask. When anything free lands on you, as a favor, a compliment, lunch, an upgrade, wait for what follows. If a request arrives within a day, you have your classification. Gratitude for gifts, vigilance for down payments. Second, repay in your own currency, on your own clock. The trap needs their framing of what you owe. Break it by choosing the size and timing of the return yourself. A man who repays deliberately was never in debt, he was in an exchange. Third, and this one is for the ambitious among you, keep your own ledger clean. Never accept a favor from someone you may one day need to refuse. That sentence is worth the whole chapter. Read it twice. 3 laws now: the sealed mouth, the calm center, the named debt. And I made you a promise at the door. These 3 alone would show you every manipulation for the rest of your life. Here is why that's true. Every play that will ever be run on you needs you talking, triggered, or owing. Close those 3 doors, and the common predator simply moves on to softer prey. If this candle has earned its oil so far, press the like. It tells the machines the library deserves to be found. That's the last thing I'll ask of you tonight. What comes next is subtler. The next law isn't about a predator at all, it's about a room. And what a room full of confident people can make you do to your own eyes. Law 4. The mirrored room. In 1951, in a plain classroom at Swarthmore College, 8 young men were shown 2 cards. and 7 of them began calmly and confidently to lie. Solomon Ash's setup was insultingly simple. Card 1, a single line. Card 2, 3 lines of obviously different lengths. Say which of the 3 matches the first. A child gets it right every time. Alone, people erred less than 1% of the time, but 7 of the 8 men were actors, and on cue all 7 gave the same wrong answer, relaxed, certain, one after another. Then it was the real subject's turn, 8th in line, staring at a line that his eyes told him was the answer, and a room that told him it wasn't. 75% of subjects denied their own eyes at least once. On average, people conformed on 1/3 of the rigged trials. Some caved nearly every time. And when Ash interviewed them after, the darkest findings surfaced. Some hadn't just said the wrong answer to fit in. They had started to see it. The room reached in and edited the picture. No threats, no stakes. Strangers they'd never meet again, and a fact as checkable as the length of a line. Now ask yourself what a room can do when the stakes are your career, the strangers are your colleagues, and the line is something genuinely uncertain, an investment, a strategy, a verdict on some absent person's character. You've sat in that room. The meeting where the senior voice speaks first and 11 heads nod. The group chat where one hot take hardens into consensus before you've finished reading it. The 5-star product with reviews that all somehow use the same adjectives. The mirrored room is any space where the answers around you arrive before your own, because whoever controls the first few mirrors controls what everyone else sees. And the professionals know it. That's why the con man plants shills to bid first at the auction. Why the propaganda machine buys its first 100,000 followers. Why everyone's already on board with this is said before the vote, not after. Social proof isn't evidence, it's scenery, and scenery can be built. The 4th law, a room can edit your eyes, so read your eyes before entering the room. That phrase is the entire defense. Ash found that when subjects wrote their answers privately before hearing the group, conformity collapsed. The anchor of a committed answer, even one only you have seen, turns out to be enough. The room can pressure a preference. It struggles to erase a commitment. Field notes, mirrors in daylight, the laugh track. Canned laughter was tested to destruction decades ago. Audiences rate the same joke funnier when fake strangers laugh at it. And they rate it funnier even while reporting that the laugh track is annoying and obviously artificial. Knowing the mirror is a mirror does not switch it off. Broadcasters kept the cans for 50 years because the numbers never lied. The AstroTurf. Before certain votes and product launches, consensus is now purchased in bulk. Bot farms and paid commenters seeding 10,000 copies of the same organic-looking opinion. The target isn't persuasion, it's scenery, walking you into a room where everyone already seems to agree, so your dissent feels like a defect. Count independent sources, or be counted by them. The menu. Most popular. Bestseller. Customers also bought. Retail's quietest weapon is a printed crowd. Items flagged as favorites sell dramatically more with zero change to the item. Restaurants anchor a high-margin dish with the label and watch the herd assemble. Nobody lied, technically. Somebody just built you a room. Tonight's protocol, first verdict before chorus. Any question that matters, hire or pass, buy or wait, true or nonsense. Write one sentence of your own answer before you hear the room. Scroll the reviews or ask a single soul. You can change your mind after, that's called thinking. Changing it without noticing, that's called the room. Second, count the independent sources. 10 people repeating one origin is one source wearing 10 faces. Before everyone says moves you, trace it. Everyone or one loud mirror. Third, honor the flinch. When your private answer and the room disagree, that flash of discomfort is the signal, not the noise. It doesn't always mean you're right, it means stop. Someone is editing. But pressure from a crowd is slow. Sometimes they can't wait for a room to form around you. Sometimes they just set the building on fire. Law 5, manufactured urgency. Somewhere in a training room decades ago, a car sales manager wrote a sentence on a whiteboard that has cost ordinary people more money than any thief in history. The fear of loss beats the hope of gain. He didn't need a laboratory. But the laboratory agrees when Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky mapped how humans actually decide. Work that took the Nobel, one finding towered over the rest. Losses loom roughly twice as large as equivalent gains. Losing $100 hurts about twice as much as winning 100 delights. We are not calculators. We are alarm systems with a wallet. Now, if you wanted to steer an alarm system, you wouldn't argue with it. You'd ring it. Only 2 left at this price, the checkout timer counting down in red. The offer expires when you leave the room. Another buyer is coming to see it at 6. The recruiter's exploding deadline. The invented crisis at work that requires your weekend. Again, mysteriously discovered on Friday at 4. Stand back far enough and you'll see they are one machine with one function. Compress the clock until thinking becomes impossible. Your deliberate mind, the slow one, the one that reads contracts and remembers your priorities, needs time the way a fire needs oxygen. Urgency is a controlled vacuum. It doesn't beat your judgment in a fair fight. It removes the judge from the courtroom, then holds the trial. And here is the tell, the one detail that unmasks the machine every time. Manufactured urgency always arrives with a salesman attached. Real deadlines exist, the tide, the tax office, the closing gate. But notice, real deadlines are indifferent to your decision. The tide doesn't care if you sail. When the person announcing the deadline is also the person who profits from your yes, the clock isn't information. The clock is a weapon, and it's pointed at you. The counterfeiters even leave fingerprints, the countdown timer that resets when you reload the page. Last chance emails that arrive weekly, each the final one. The 2 seats left flight with 2 seats left every day for a month. Scarcity as a subscription. Once you've caught a clock lying to you a single time, you owe it no belief forever. The 5th law. Urgency is the costume fear wears when it's working for someone else. Field notes, counterfeit clocks in daylight, the booking screen. 3 people are looking at this room right now. Only 1 left at this price. Regulators in several countries have caught travel platforms generating these messages from thin air. Pressure theatre, stage managed by an algorithm that shows 2 seats left to everyone, every day, forever. The room was never scarce. Your deliberation was the only thing being liquidated, the exploding offer. A recruiter calls, the position is yours and if you sign by Friday. Real companies hiring real talent survive a weekend of thought. The deadline exists because a rested candidate negotiates and a stampeded one signs. The calm counter, I'm very interested, and I'll give you my answer Tuesday, is itself a test. Watch what the reaction confesses, the pump. In the trading discords and the crypto channels, urgency is the entire product. Get in before the next leg, whales are loading, last chance before liftoff. Every chart is vertical, every window closing. The men running these rooms bought earlier. Your urgency is their exit liquidity, your fear of missing out the door they leave through. Tonight's protocol. First, and this is the crown jewel of the whole chapter, the one-night rule. Any opportunity that cannot survive 1 night of sleep was never an opportunity. Say it exactly. If it's real, it will be real tomorrow. Then watch the reaction. Calm acceptance, possibly honest. Escalating pressure. Sudden discounts, wounded feelings. I can't promise it'll still be here. You've just made the machine show its gears. The pressure is the confession. Second, name the beneficiary of the clock. Whose deadline is this, factually? Who profits if I decide in the next 10 minutes? If the answer is the person holding the stopwatch, slow down on principle. Third, pre-decide your numbers in daylight. The maximum price, the minimum salary, the conditions you won't cross, written down before you enter the arena while your cortex still runs the building. Under pressure, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall to your preparation. Kahneman would tell you, System 1 takes the wheel in a countdown, so leave System 2's instructions taped to the dashboard. But urgency is a blunt tool, and you may already feel yourself hardening against it. So the sophisticated operator often reaches for something with better manners. He doesn't rush you, he simply outranks you, or at least he wears the costume of a man who does. Law 6, the borrowed throne. In the summer of 1961, in a basement at Yale, ordinary men, teachers, salesmen, engineers, pressed a switch marked 450 volts. Danger. Over the screams of a stranger. Because a calm man in a grey lab coat said 5 words. The experiment requires you to continue. You know Milgram's name. Sit with the numbers anyway because they never lose their cold. Psychiatrists surveyed beforehand predicted perhaps 1 man in 1,000 would go to the end. A lunatic fringe. The actual figure, 65%, 2 of every 3, not sadists. The recordings capture them trembling, laughing nervously, begging to stop. And then continuing. The lab coat absorbed the responsibility, and their conscience, relieved of the weight, let their finger fall. The learners' screams were acting. The lesson was not. Most people will obey a costume long past the point where they'd refuse a man, and it takes so little costume. In the 70s, social psychologist Leonard Bickman ran a planar experiment on the streets of Brooklyn. A man stops passers-by. "Pick up that bag for me." "Give that fellow a dime for the meter." In ordinary clothes, roughly a third complied. Same man, same words, dressed in a security guard's uniform, a rented costume with no authority behind it whatsoever, and compliance shot toward 90%. People obeyed the fabric. Many kept obeying even after the guard walked away and couldn't see them. Now look up from the basement and the street corner and see the wardrobe department you actually live in, the title on the email signature, the blue check mark, the suit at the front of the room, the framed diploma behind the desk, the confident baritone of a man reading someone else's numbers. Experts say. Studies show. Which studies? Shown by whom? The financial guru with the leased Lamborghini costume, the consultant's letterhead costume. Authority, real authority, is a claim about evidence, but the circuit in your chest can't check evidence. It checks costumes, and costumes can be rented by anyone with the price of the rental. The 6th law. Respect the throne only after you've checked whose weight it actually bears. Because here is the forbidden footnote. Genuine authority survives the checking. The real surgeon is not offended when you ask her success rates. The real expert shows his work, gladly. It is precisely the borrowed throne that punishes the question, that answers, "How do you know?" with, "How dare you?" Indignation at verification is the confession. Field notes. Rented thrones in daylight. The phone call from your bank's security department. Calm, procedural badge number, offered unprompted. There's been suspicious activity. Funds must be moved to a safe account immediately. Note the borrowed throne holding a counterfeit clock. Billions vanish annually into this single script because the voice wore the uniform of authority and the victim obeyed the fabric. Banks never ask you to move money. The throne that can't be called back on a number you looked up is rented. The guru's jet. The financial mentor films his masterclass ad in a private jet, rented by the hour, on a runway, going nowhere. The Lamborghini is leased for the shoot. The penthouse is an Airbnb. Costume top to bottom. Because the costume converts, audiences obey wealth's wardrobe long before checking wealth's receipts. The pay-to-play plaque. As featured in and a logo wall, entire industries sell the costume itself. Vanity awards, pay-to-publish business councils, conference stages that invoice the speaker. The diploma on the wall may certify expertise, or merely a paid invoice. Ask how the throne was obtained. Real ones have load-bearing paperwork. Tonight's protocol. First, strip the costume. Before any claim moves your money or your obedience, run the stranger test. If a nobody said this exact sentence to me at a bus stop, would it stand on its own? If yes, obey the evidence. If no, you were about to obey a lab coat. Second, separate the domain from the halo. Authority leaks, a Nobel in physics pronouncing on diets, a billionaire on virtue, an actor on medicine. Expertise is a narrow beam, not a floodlight. Ask, is this throne even in the room it's commanding? Third, make how do you know your reflex, asked politely and watched closely. The answer matters less than the reaction to being asked. Welcome, real. Wrath rented. Costumes command you in a moment, but the patient operator has a slower instrument, one that doesn't command at all. It asks you for almost nothing, and that is exactly how it takes everything. Law 7, the slow yes. In 1966, two Stanford researchers knocked on doors in Palo Alto with a request so obscene that only 17% of homeowners accepted. "Let us plant a billboard on your front lawn." A huge, ugly sign reading, "Drive carefully," shown to them in a photo that made the house look like a construction site. Then Jonathan Friedman and Scott Fraser changed one thing. A different set of homeowners got a visit 2 weeks earlier with a tiny ask, "Display this 3-inch sticker, 'Be a safe driver,' in your window." Nearly everyone said yes. Who argues with a sticker? 2 weeks later, the billboard team knocked on the sticker households' doors. Among these people, the monstrous sign was accepted not by 17%, but by 76%. Same sign, same lawn. The only difference, a 3-inch commitment, planted 2 weeks earlier. The sticker hadn't decorated a window. It had quietly rewritten a self-image. "I am apparently the kind of person who does things for road safety." And when the big ask came, refusing it would have meant contradicting not a stranger but themselves. Foot in the door, the textbooks call it. The library calls it the slow yes. No one who understands people asks a stranger to carry a boulder. He asks you to hold a pebble. Then he never stops adding gravel. You have lived inside this architecture. The free trial that becomes a subscription that becomes a bundle. The quick favor at work that becomes a duty, then a role, then a job title you never interviewed for and aren't paid for. The relationship where each small boundary quietly crossed made the next crossing unremarkable. And at the black end of the spectrum, the cult. Nobody joins a cult. People attend a friendly dinner, then a weekend retreat, then a small donation, a bigger one, a break with a skeptical family member. Each step, just one step from the last. The recruit isn't captured. He is compounded. Robert Cialdini, who spent 3 years undercover in sales trainings and compliance operations, put the mechanism in one line. Once a man makes a commitment, however small, he begins to bend his behavior to stay consistent with it. Consistency is a virtue in engineers and a leash in the hands of an operator. The con man's real product was never the pebble. It was your signature on the idea of yourself as someone who says yes to him. The 7th law, no one enslaves a man in one ask. Every cage is built one reasonable bar at a time. Field notes, pebbles in daylight, the gem pack. Free-to-play games are engineered around a single sacred conversion, the first 99-cent purchase. Not for the dollar, for the identity flip from player to payer. Once the first pebble is placed, the data shows spending escalates along a curve the designers drew before you installed. The whales weren't caught. They were compounded, one reasonable offer at a time. The romance script. The overseas stranger never opens with the emergency. First, attention, weeks of it. Then a small favor, a phone card, a birthday gift. Each granted request makes you more invested in the story where your generosity was wise. By the time the medical crisis arrives, refusing means auditing every previous yes. Victims routinely send more after first suspecting fraud. The pebbles have become a self they must defend. The scope creep. Could you glance at this deck? Becomes owning the deck, then the meeting, then the function, unpaid, untitled. The correction is never dramatic. At the next pebble, simply reprice. Happy to, let's talk about what comes off my plate. The stacker retreats at the first sign of an auditor. Tonight's protocol. First, redecide from 0 at every escalation, every renewal, every one more thing. Ask the only question that breaks the spell. If this were the first ask cold from a stranger, would I say yes? Judge the boulder as a boulder, not as pebble number 40. Second, audit your pebbles. Somewhere in your life right now is a commitment that grew in the dark, a duty, a payment, an arrangement nobody would design from scratch. You already thought of it while I was speaking, that one. Put it on paper tonight. Third, guard the first yes like a border. It costs nothing to hold a sticker, that's the lie. The first yes is never the transaction, it's the precedent. The cheapest place to win a war is at the first fence post. 7 laws. Feel the shape of what you're carrying now, because the first half of this volume was about them. The silence fillers, the provocateurs, the gift givers, the mirrored rooms, the burning clocks, the borrowed thrones, the pebble stackers, doors and how they're forced. The second half is a different book entirely. Quieter. It's about the side of the ledger no one ever audits. You. And it ends at the 13th law, the one that makes a man impossible to farm, the one they had the best reasons never to teach. Stay if you're awake, sleep if you're going. The library keeps your page either way, a note between the shelves while the candle is trimmed. 7 laws in one breath each. The mouth sealed, words are inventory. The center, calm, no handle, no puppet. The chains named, a gift before an ask is scaffolding. The room, mirrored, verdict before chorus. The clock, counterfeit, real things survive a night's sleep. The throne, borrowed, respect what bears weight, not what wears fabric. And the yes slow, cages are built one reasonable bar at a time. If your eyes are closing, let them. These pages will read themselves into you. The 6 that remain are the deeper shelf, and the last of them, the 13th, is the reason this volume was sealed at all. We continue. Law 8, the unmoved price. 2 of the finest minds of the 20th century once stood a roomful of people in front of a carnival wheel of fortune and proved that a random number could reach into their judgment and move it like furniture. Kahneman and Tversky rigged the wheel to stop only on 10 or 65. Spin it. Note your number. Obviously meaningless, obviously luck. Then answer. What percentage of United Nations countries are African? Those who drew 10 guessed on average 25%. Those who drew 65 guessed 45. A carnival wheel, which every subject knew was a carnival wheel, dragged their estimates across 20 percentage points, and not one of them felt the hand on the furniture. Anchoring. The first number in the room becomes the room's gravity. Every figure that follows doesn't replace it. It orbits it. Now walk out of the laboratory and into your life. The original price crossed out above the sale price, an anchor, often never charged to anyone. The first salary figure spoken in the interview, the opening demand in any negotiation, absurd on purpose, because even after you beat it down proudly, you've landed nearer their sun than yours. The agent who shows you the overpriced apartment first, so the next one feels like mercy, and then, the oldest trap in the bazaar, the one with your own fingerprints on it, you make an offer. The other side says nothing, perhaps a slow breath through the teeth, and into that silence, remember Law 1, you speak again. But look, I could do a bit less. You just bid against yourself. 2 concessions, 0 received. Every negotiation manual from the souk to the State Department carries the same commandment, and men lose fortunes to it weekly. Never negotiate against yourself. 1 offer, then the burden of speech belongs to the other side of the table, and it does not return to you until they've placed something on it. The 8th law. The first number owns the room, so either place it deliberately or refuse to orbit it. Field notes, anchors in daylight. The crossed-out price. Was $199, now $79. Court cases have forced retailers to admit the quiet part. Some items never sold a single unit at the original price. It existed to be crossed out, an anchor manufactured purely to make the real price feel like plunder. The reference point was fiction. The discount arithmetic in your head ran on it anyway. The add-on aisle. After agreeing to $30,000 for the car, the $500 floor mats feel like pocket lint, which is why they're offered after, never before. Finance offices sequence the extras against the big anchor deliberately. The same mats presented cold against 0 would be laughed off the lot. Re-anchor every add-on against 0. That's where your money lives. The listing game. Real estate agents seed a neighborhood tour with an overpriced wreck first, not to sell it, but to install a sun. Every subsequent house orbits it and feels reasonable. The defense is the page you wrote before the tour. Comparables, budget, walkaway. Bring your own sun, or borrow theirs at compound interest. Tonight's protocol. First, bring your own sun. Before any negotiation, write 3 numbers in daylight. The target, the acceptable, the walkaway. The page is your anchor now. Their opening number gets compared to the page, not to your hopes. Second, when their anchor lands, don't haggle it, re-anchor. Counter from your page as if their number were weather. Noted, irrelevant. The worst move is bargaining in inches from a mile wrong start. Every inch concedes the mile. Third, 1 offer, then the seal. Make your number, close your mouth, and let the silence belong to them. It is their turn to be uncomfortable. If they let the quiet stretch, smile inwardly, you've met a fellow reader. But numbers are the crude currency of power. The refined operator pays in something older, softer, and far harder to audit. He pays in you. Law 9, the Fed ego. There is a sentence that has opened more locked doors than any crowbar ever forged, and it is always some variation of this. You're not like the others. You actually get it. Feel it work on you even now, even quoted, even inside a warning. That small warmth, the wish that it were true, and the suspicion that, well, it might be. Flattery is not praise. Keep the two in separate drawers. Praise is payment. It arrives after the work, aimed at the deed, and costs the speaker something. Accuracy. Flattery is bait. It arrives before the ask, aimed at your identity, and costs the speaker nothing because he isn't describing you. He is describing the version of you most likely to open the door. Watch the grammar of it. Praise says that analysis was sharp. Your third point changed my mind. Flattery says you're brilliant, you're different, a man of your caliber, someone with your vision. And notice where those sentences physically point. Not at work, at the self. That's the tell, because the self is where the locks are. The con artist's oldest instrument is not the lie about the deal. It's the compliment about the mark. You're too smart for the ordinary scams. That's why I'm showing you this special one. The recruit hears she's chosen. The lonely man hears he's finally understood. Same key, different doors. And the mechanism, once you see it, is pure Law 3 wearing perfume. A compliment is a gift, unrequested. The ledger opens. Warmth demands warmth. And the ask arrives while your guard is being carried out of the room on a cushion. Combine it with the slow yes and you get the full architecture of seduction, recruitment, and fraud. Feed the ego, open the ledger, stack the pebbles. The great courts knew this science before science did. The courtier flattered the king not because the king was great, but because a fed ego stops counting the silverware. And the kings who survived, the Marcus Aurelius kind, kept one advisor whose whole job was to not flatter, and listen to that one man twice as hard as to all the perfume combined. The 9th law, watch what is asked of you within a day of any compliment aimed at your identity. The ask is the invoice for the meal. Field notes, the meal and the invoice in daylight. The exclusive invitation. Congratulations, you've been selected for inclusion. Vanity registries pay to join honor societies, award finals with an attendance fee. Entire industries exist to sell the sentence you are special with an invoice stapled to page 2. The selection criterion was a mailing list. The product was your reflection, the chosen employee. You're the only one I trust with this. Delivered warmly and unaccompanied by budget, title, or raise. Translation, in ledger terms, the only one who accepts this workload at this price. Flattery is the cheapest compensation instrument ever invented, and it is paid out precisely to those whose word, Law 9, the mirror clause, is indispensable. Watch what arrives within a day of being called irreplaceable, the tailored scam. Read the court files of the great frauds, and one line repeats from victims of every education level. He told me I was too sophisticated for ordinary investments. The con never argues you're gullible. It argues you're exceptional, and exceptional men get access to exceptional returns. The moment a deal is offered because of who you are, check who wrote the description. Tonight's protocol. First, sort praise from perfume with one glance. Does it point at the work or at me? Work. Bank it. It's information. Self. Stay warm outside. Put one hand on your wallet inside. Second, run the 24-hour audit. Compliment received. Clock started. When the request arrives, and with the perfumed kind it nearly always does, place them side by side and see the machine whole. Third, the mirror clause and its stings. Notice which flattery works on you. Every man has one word that opens him. Brilliant, strong, different, chosen, finally appreciated. Find yours before someone else does. The one who names your word first, you or the operator, owns that door forever. Fed egos make fast decisions. And speed, as you're about to see, has always been the most expensive thing a man can buy. The next law is the one the impatient can't even hear, which is precisely why it works. Law 10, the long game. In 1930, a professional troublemaker with a printing press decided to destroy the richest man in the world. And the richest man in the world responded with the most terrifying weapon in his arsenal. He continued his morning routine. For decades, enemies of John D. Rockefeller lined up to provoke the duel. Journalists, prosecutors, rival barons, a federal government that eventually broke his company into 34 pieces. The pattern of his responses drove them mad. Courtesy, patience, silence, and time. While rivals burned themselves out in feuds and market panics, he compounded, quietly buying, quietly building, quietly waiting out every man whose clock ran on rage. When Standard Oil was shattered by the courts in 1911, the pieces grew to be worth far more than the whole, and the old man, who had simply held on, became wealthier from his defeat than he had ever been from victory. His actual sayings are duller than legend. Which is the lesson? No genius strokes, just a man who understood that time is a weapon that reloads itself, and that almost every opponent he'd ever face would be paying interest on impatience. Seneca, a man who made and lost imperial fortunes and had unusual clarity about both, wrote that anger is a brief madness. Ira furor brevis est is how his Rome said it. Brief. That's the operative word, and the Stoics built strategy on it. The provoked man acts inside the madness window. He sells at the bottom, replies all at midnight, takes the bait, takes the swing. The long game player simply waits out the window and then faces, in place of a possessed enemy, a tired man cleaning up his own wreckage. Modern behavioral science gave the old weapon a price tag. The impulse to grab the near reward over the distant larger one, hyperbolic discounting, the economists call it, is measurable, predictable, and harvested. Entire industries are engineered to buy your future at a discount. The payday loan, the rage bait headline, the act now everything. Look around the economy and ask who profits when you can't wait. And then notice that nobody profits when you can. That vacancy is the opportunity. Patience has no competition. The 10th law. Whoever needs the outcome sooner is the weaker player, so move the game onto the long clock, where almost no one can follow you. Field notes of the long clock in daylight, the trading account. The published research on retail day traders is brutal and consistent. Across markets and decades, the overwhelming majority lose money against the boring index they were too impatient to hold. The market, an old line goes, is a machine for moving money from the impatient to the patient, and it runs on volunteers. Meanwhile, the index investor, who did nothing all year, was paid for it. The payday storefront. Annualize the fees on a 2-week payday loan, and the rate runs to triple digits. A machine purpose-built to purchase a poor man's future at panic prices. Every buy now, pay later button is the same lathe, politer. Whoever needs it sooner pays the spread. The entire credit industry is Law 10 with a banking license. The promotion. Watch 2 careers. The hothead who wins every argument, and the quiet one who documents, delivers, and lets rivals burn themselves down in public. 10 years later, one of them signs the other's reviews. Organizations like markets pay compound interest on composure. Slowly, then suddenly, then permanently. Tonight's protocol. First, the 10-10-10 gate. Before any decision made in heat, the purchase, the message, the resignation, ask how you'll judge it in 10 minutes, 10 months, 10 years. The 3 answers rarely agree. The 10-year voice is the only one that isn't being farmed. Second, respond tomorrow. To the insulting email, the outrageous offer, the provocation designed for tonight. Reply on your clock, not the sender's. Urgency you didn't create is leverage you're donating. Even one sunrise strips a provocation of most of its voltage. Third, choose one compounding machine and feed it boringly. A skill, an asset, a body of work, a reputation for keeping your word. One thing where each deposit multiplies the next. Rage spends, panic spends, deposits compound. Decades later it looks like magic, and it was only arithmetic plus a sealed mouth. But patience must not be confused with passivity. The long game player still fights. He is simply murderously selective about where, and that selection is a law of its own. Law 11. The chosen battle. Every fight you are invited to is a purchase. The question no one teaches you to ask is, who is selling the tickets? Look at any conflict that is trying to recruit you tonight. The quarrel in the comments, the office turf war, the family feud with its 20-year-old score, the stranger's insult still echoing at 2 in the morning. Now do the accounting they hope you'll never do. A battle costs attention, the only currency you spend every day and can never mint more of. It costs position. The moment you swing at every provocation, you become predictable, and Law 2 already taught you what a predictable man is. A puppet with visible strings. And it costs the war. Every skirmish you accept is a front opened away from the thing you actually wanted. The dueling culture of old Europe understood invitations perfectly. A duel could be declined, but pride made refusal feel like death, so men of genuine consequence were regularly bled by men of none. Think about that mechanism, because it never went away, it just moved into your pocket. The nobody with nothing to lose challenges the somebody with everything to lose, and any acceptance is the nobody's victory. He was elevated the moment you turned to face him. Rage bait is a duel, the troll is a duelist. The colleague who needles you in meetings is selling tickets to a fight where he collects the gate either way. Marcus Aurelius, again the private journal, left the counterspell in 9 words. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. Not forgiveness, note. Strategy. To answer the small man in his own coin is to become denominated in his currency. To proceed unbothered, visibly, maddeningly unbothered, is to leave him fighting a war with no opponent, which is the one war that cannot be won. And when a fight is worth it, because some are, this is a law of selection, not surrender. The chosen battle has 3 signatures. The prize is real and nameable, the prize is winnable by fighting, and you pick the ground and the hour. Anything else is someone else's box office. The 11th law. He who fights everywhere rules nowhere. Power belongs to the man whose battles are chosen, never sold to him. Field notes. Box offices in daylight. The Streisand effect. In 2003, a celebrity sued to suppress one obscure coastline photograph of her home, a picture 6 people had viewed. The lawsuit made it global news, hundreds of thousands downloaded it within the month, and the phenomenon now bears her name. The battle itself was the amplifier. Some fights can only be won by refusing to sell them tickets. The boardroom war. Inside a certain phone giant of the 2000s, the case studies name it Nokia, divisions fought internal turf battles over platforms and budgets, while a rival in California quietly rebuilt the entire industry. The fiercest combatants won their hallway wars and lost the world. Every battle consumes the one resource the real war needed: attention. The 2 AM thread. You, a stranger, and a comment box, 2 unpaid gladiators, and a platform selling advertisements against your cortisol. Nobody has ever conceded in that arena. The algorithm simply feeds whoever bleeds. The house always wins the engagement, which is the polite word for the fight. Close the tab. The arena collapses without you. Tonight's protocol. First, the ticket test. Before entering any conflict, one question aloud: who profits if I engage? If the answer includes anyone but you, the provocateur, the platform, the audience, the rival delighted to watch you spend, you're not a combatant, you're a customer. Second, name the prize or decline the war. Complete the sentence: if I win this, I get blank. If the blank fills with anything like being right, teaching him a lesson, he can't just say that. Those are gift shop items, not prizes. Close the tab. Sleep. Third, for the battle that passes both gates, choose the ground. Move it to your terrain. In writing, if you think in writing. Tomorrow, if tonight is his hour. Law 10 already gave you the sunrise. On the point you define, not the 10 he scattered. The general who picks the field has won half the engagement before a sword is drawn. But even the perfectly chosen battle rests on a deeper foundation. The quiet fact that decides most contests before they begin. Whether you can afford to lose, and whether you can afford to leave. Law 12, the quiet exit. The most powerful sentence in any negotiation on earth has only 5 words, and most people can't say it because it happens to be a lie in their mouth. I can walk away. Negotiation theory has a dry name for this: BATNA, the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And one blunt finding underneath all its literature: the party with the better alternative holds the table, almost regardless of anything said at the table. Skill matters. Anchors matter. You learned the eighth law. But alternatives are gravity. The buyer with another seller, the candidate with another offer, the partner genuinely capable of solitude. These people negotiate from a different physics. Everyone can feel it. Nobody can fake it. Because desperation broadcasts. The recruiter hears it under the salary question. The landlord smells it at the viewing. The manipulative partner, and this is the dark heart of the law, tests for it, early and deliberately. The small mistreatment, casually placed, exists to answer one question. Does this one leave? If the answer is no, mark the date. The price of staying will rise annually. The abuser's arithmetic is not passion. It is a hostage calculation. What does leaving cost this person, and can that cost be raised? Isolate from friends, exits burned. Control the money, exits burned. You cannot fix such a room from inside it. The room is the fact that you can't leave. Now, the forbidden inversion. They teach you to negotiate harder. Nobody teaches you to need less, because a man who needs less is largely unsellable, unmanageable, and unfarmable. The Stoics ran this as a literal practice. Seneca, one of Rome's richest men, set aside days to eat coarse bread and wear the rough cloak, asking himself, in his own words, "Is this what I used to dread?" He wasn't performing poverty. He was auditing his exits, proving to his own nervous system that the worst case was survivable. A man who has rehearsed losing the job cannot be held hostage by the job. The 12th law: power belongs to whoever can leave the room. Build your exits before you need them, and never enter a room you can't leave. Field notes: exits in daylight, the golden handcuffs. The raise arrives and the lifestyle rises to meet it. The larger apartment, the financed car, the standing obligations. 5 years in, the salary is triple and the exits are fewer. A man spending everything he earns has converted income into hostage material. The corporation didn't build the cage. It merely noticed one was being self-assembled and calibrated accordingly. Savings are not thrift. Savings are jurisdiction. The third date: early small disrespect, the casual insult, the flash of temper over nothing, the boundary nudged, lands with suspicious precision because it is often exactly what it looks like: a probe, testing whether this one leaves. The answer given on date 3 sets the tariff for year 10. The most eloquent sentence in any relationship's grammar is a calm, early departure. The quiet quarter. The professional who interviews twice a year while perfectly content is running maintenance on the 5 words. When the layoffs or the ultimatums arrive, she negotiates from gravity while colleagues plead from need. Same talent, different physics. Alternatives, like parachutes, are strictly pre-crash equipment. Tonight's protocol. First, build the vault of leaving. Money is crystallized exit. Every month feed a fund whose only purpose is the 5 words, "I can walk away," said truthfully. Call it what it is. It will outperform every negotiation seminar you could buy with it. Second, keep one live alternative at all times. 1 interview a quarter while happy at work. A second skill growing in the dark. A friendship outside the couple. A life outside the crowd that would punish your independence. Alternatives are muscles, built before the fight, useless after it starts. Third, rehearse the worst case on purpose. 1 day a month live markedly below your means. The plain food, the old coat, the small room. Not punishment, reconnaissance. You are visiting the thing they threaten you with and finding it habitable. The fear of loss, remember, is the master lever of every law in this volume's first half. This practice is how the lever is unbolted from your chest. And there it is, did you notice? Every law tonight has been circling one hidden center. The mouth, the temper, the debts, the crowd, the clock, the throne, the pebbles, the anchor, the ego, the patience, the battles, the exits. Every single one obeys or betrays the same master. The 13th law, the reason this volume was sealed. We open it now, Law 13, the final law. Around the year 55, in the slave quarters of Nero's Rome, there lived a crippled Greek slave who owned nothing, commanded no one, and could be legally killed by his master on a whim. Within 2 generations, his words were instructing emperors, and one emperor in particular, a man named Marcus, whose private journal quotes him like scripture. The slave's name was Epictetus, and his entire philosophy, the whole of it, stands on one cut, made with surgical coldness through the middle of reality. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. Your property, your reputation, your body, the behavior of others, the verdicts of crowds, the length of your life, not up to you. Not fully, not finally. One territory only is sovereign, and cannot be entered by force. Your judgments, your aims, your responses. The inner acre. Epictetus in chains was freer than Nero on the throne, and he could prove it. Nero's power required the cooperation of 10,000 outer things, senates, armies, audiences, fear. It could be, and was, taken. The slave's power required the cooperation of exactly one thing, and no man could reach it. The historian's irony writes itself. The emperor died hunted, forced to open his own throat, whispering about the artist the world was losing. A man owned to the last breath by the audience's verdict. The slave died old, teaching, at peace. Now watch the 12 laws fold into the 13th like blades into a handle. Why does the mouth leak? It seeks the outer, approval, the reward circuit of being heard. Why does provocation work? It convinces you an outer event, an insult, a slight, has entered the inner acre, where in fact nothing enters without a signed judgment. No man can wound you without your verdict that you've been wounded. That sentence is Epictetus, almost verbatim, and Marcus copies it into his tent journal like a man sharpening the same knife nightly. Why do gifts chain you, crowds edit you, clocks stampede you, thrones command you? One answer, 12 costumes. The operator's every tool is a claim on your inner acre, and every claim is void without your signature. The 13th law, no one can rule a man who rules himself. Self-command is the whole of power. The rest is furniture. And now you know why this law of all of them stays off the syllabus. A man who needs the crowd's verdict can be steered by anyone holding a scorecard. A man who panics at loss can be herded by anyone holding a clock. But a man whose center is self-governed, who can be silent, calm, debtless, unhurried, unbought and gone. What exactly is the handle? Where does the lever attach? Every system that profits from steerable men has quietly voted, for 20 centuries, that you should learn algebra instead. One more page is pinned here. A field report, the strangest in the library. September 1965. A US Navy fighter pilot named James Stockdale ejects over North Vietnam, and in the seconds between the cockpit and the parachute jerk, he says to himself a sentence almost too strange to be invented. He later wrote it down exactly. I'm leaving the world of technology and entering the world of Epictetus. A Stanford philosophy elective years earlier had lodged the slave's handbook in his head. He fell into 7.5 years of Hoa Lo prison, torture, leg irons, 4 years of solitary. As the senior officer, he organized the resistance of hundreds of prisoners around, quite literally, the dichotomy of control. The guards own your body, your pain, your isolation. The acre they cannot enter without your signature is your judgment, your integrity, your response. He instructed his men on what torture could and could not compel, and how a man returns from a forced confession without surrendering the inner acre. You take back the territory the moment you resume ruling it. Stockdale came home a Medal of Honor recipient and spent his remaining decades writing about a Greek slave. Asked who didn't survive the camps, he gave the answer now taught in business schools as the Stockdale paradox, the blind optimists, the men who staked the acre on a Christmas rescue that outer events kept refusing to deliver. Faith on the wrong side of the cut, he said, kills. Command on the right side of it is unconquerable. It was tested in the one laboratory no ethics board would ever approve. The law held. Tonight's protocol, the last one, and the only one that is a practice for life rather than a trick for Tuesday. First, run the cut hourly if needed. Whatever is burning, say aloud which side of the line it lives on. Up to me or not up to me. Their opinion, not. Your reply, yours. The market, not. Your position size, yours. The cut takes 4 seconds and reclaims the acre every time it's made. Second, keep the evening ledger. Seneca did this nightly by his own account when the lamp was out. 3 questions. What did I do badly? What did I do well? What did I leave undone? 3 lines. No flogging, no ceremony. A ruler inspecting his one true territory. The men of the library have kept this ledger for 2,000 years. Tonight the pen is yours. Third, sign nothing under torchlight. Every manipulation in this volume ends as a document shoved at your inner acre. Feel this, fear this, owe this, obey this now. Your signature is your judgment, and you may always take the document into the morning. What is real will still be real tomorrow. What is not, never was. 13 laws. Hold the litany once whole before the candle goes out. The mouth sealed, the center calm, the chains named, the room mirrored, verdict first, the clock counterfeit, sleep on it, the throne borrowed, check the weight, the yes slow, count your pebbles, the price unmoved, bring your own son, the ego fed, find the invoice, the game long, respond tomorrow, the battle chosen, who sells the tickets, the exit quiet, never enter a room you can't leave. And beneath them all, holding them all, the acre no one enters without your signature. This volume rewards a second listening. The laws you needed most are the ones you slept through, and the library finds that fitting. Your page is kept. If the ledger is still open below, you know the 3 words, and bring one soul with you next time, someone being farmed who doesn't know it yet. The library grows by candlelight, one reader at a time. Volume 2 is already on the lectern, the Emperor's secret journal, the private rules of the most powerful man who ever refused to be ruled, the tent notebook Marcus Aurelius, never meant for your eyes. What he wrote there at midnight, surrounded by plague, war, and betrayal, was not philosophy for the shelf. It was a survival manual for the inner acre. And we open it next. The candle is low, the door knows the way out. The library remembers who entered.